This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I am your host, Mike Rappin. With me this week are two pretty stellar individuals, Kate Scotchless.
Hello.
And Nick White.
Hey.
Thank you both for joining me this week. I'm super excited that you're here. Before we get started, I just want to ask you guys a question about your soda cans or pop cans in Michigan. Do you ever find that they are like extremely dirty on top for some reason? Like if you buy them, not maybe from like a packaged cardboard box, but like if you go to a restaurant or something and they give you a can of soda, do you find that it's like really dirty on top, or is that just a New York thing?
What?
No, I see this occasionally. It's kind of, especially for someone like me, that's pretty unnerving, and usually that means they're going to sit outside, and I'm going to find a way to light them on fire inevitably.
Yeah. This is like it's a weird thing that I've noticed for like the last few years since I've lived in New York, is like all the soda cans that I buy or energy drinks or anything that's like, in an aluminum can, it's like Arizona iced tea or whatever.
Yeah.
Unless you go to an establishment that is cleaner than most, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. Like the tops of the cans are dirty, but like even coming out of vending machines, they're just like covered in this weird something like film. Some people say it's rat pee, but it always varies depending on the establishment. Like I bought a soda from this corner store that's right by me, and like 9 times out of 10 there's like something on top of the can, so I have to bring it home and I just wash the can down really quickly before I drink out of it. It's something that's been bothering me, and it's one of those little annoying things that just happen a lot and I just can't stop thinking about it. So I figured I'd ask to see like maybe this is something I'm only discovering as an adult, and I didn't notice as a younger child, and this is why my immune system's A-okay or something. I don't know. But, like, because I've just been drinking dirt since I was a child is what I'm getting at. But, yeah, I don't know. It's just a really weird thing, and I figured I'd ask you guys to see if I was going crazy.
New York sounds awful.
Yeah, you sound really perplexed.
Yeah. I mean, you're paying for it. That's New York City on the top of those cans, and it's an experience that you're getting.
I don't know. That's my like little tidbit of the day. That's going to be a regular segment here on I Read Comic Books. I'm just kidding. Let me ask you guys, how have you been?
Please do. There's so many other neuroses to cover.
No. Let's actually get into the show. How have you been? How have comic books been? I'm going to not even give you the opportunity to start, Nick. Let's start with you, Kate.
That's fair.
Well, this past week was finals for me, so comic books haven't had much time. I read Nimona and one other book.
Okay.
But, like, hallelujah, I have such a backlog to get into now that stupid class is done. People never take a condensed grad class, ever. Just if someone asks about it, just run away. Just screech and run. Anyway, so I actually this morning, while I was doing laundry, cracked open X-Men Grand Design, which I definitely got on one of those Marvel sales, either for free or for like 99 cents.
Yeah, definitely the 99-cent one. Because otherwise it's like $20.
Yeah. So I was reading this, and I did not know what it was going into it, other than, oh, hey, this is an X-Men book that Mike has gushed about, so I guess I'll check it out for like that price, right? So it's Ed Piskor, and I read about 30 pages into the trade version. I don't think that's all of what was technically issue number 1, but so far I really liked it. It's basically like, what if an incredible comic book creator turned the X-Men Wikipedia page into a nostalgia comic?
Totally.
And it's fantastic. And it also makes me want to set up an X-Men movie marathon with the gang.
Oh, man.
I'm very in the mood for it now. Now with all this X-Men history gushing through my veins, I need it.
That book is so cool because it's like, I mean, I think that's a pretty apt description of like, what if it was a Wikipedia page? I see it as like Ed Piskor's take on what he normally does, which is like really like interesting, unique takes on a biography, and like taking it and focusing, instead of a real life thing, focusing it on the X-Men. And like, if you've ever read, I think if you like this, you're really gonna like his Hip Hop Family Tree. His Hip Hop Family Tree is very wordy and very dense. So, like, you're going to want to, if you read the trade, because I think it's in Comixology Unlimited, or you could probably get it from your library. It's a very popular book, and it's really dense, so you want to, like, take it issue at a time, or one issue at a time, because I tried to read it, like, in a sitting, and I think I spent 2.5 hours just, like, getting through the whole trade, and I was, like, exhausted afterwards, because there's so much to take in if you have any interest in hip-hop. But to Nick's point, WYSIWYG is also another really good one.
Yeah, I've read that one.
Yeah. So he's fantastic. I love this book. I mean, I'm going to shut up, but I could gush all day about it.
Yeah, no, he's a really good creator. I completely agree.
Nick, how have you been? How have comic books been?
I've been okay. Still, a little bit sleep deprived here and there and attempting to take measures to deal with that. Let me tell you, the problem with going off caffeine and continuing to go off caffeine is that you struggle to figure out if you're tired because you're off caffeine or if you were tired before and now you're just even more tired.
Oh, no.
So there's been that. Went and got my comics yesterday. My comic shop was very happy to see me after 3 weeks. Just kidding. They didn't send me a note yet. So that was at least good. And I got to have like a nice hearty 5-minute discussion about what's going on with Valiant. Sort of, I think I've talked about this before. Valiant has these deals where if you pre-order some of your books, like you pre-order like 1 or 2 arcs altogether. For example, I think one of the more recent ones was if you pre-ordered Shadow Man 4 through 11. You would get the special editions, which I've talked about how they put the content in the middle, and I hate it, but they're still great issues. You have to pre-order those, and at one point a few weeks back, they sort of kind of dropped it out of previews, if I understand this. Like at one point with some of the books, they were like, I don't know if we're going to keep doing this. And of course, none of this happened in previews. And then they were like, oh yeah, we're going to do it again. So it kind of created this weird gap, and so I had to go talk to my shop and try to make sure I'm going to get what I need. And they ended up having to actually call Valiant themselves. So it's nice to hear that, people are having to do all this stupid work just because I want like 8 extra pages of behind the scenes content. So I feel special.
Does that book end up costing you more for doing that?
No. These issues don't cost anything extra, but other than the time that was spent to get them to me. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I mean, they're really cool. Like, if anyone is kind of on the fence about, like, is this sort of a gimmick or is it stupid? Like, all of these issues normally have, like, 8 pages of script, process artwork, et cetera, et cetera. So it's definitely worth it.
Very cool.
Beyond that, I did do some reading. I read The Terrifics 3 and 4. And, of course, these are written by Jeff Lemire, as all of them have been so far. But it seems like if there are 3 certainties in life, it's death, taxes, and creative team shakeups on Big 2 books. And honestly, like a year ago when they talked about the Terrifics initially, the goal was Ivan Reyes was going to do issues 1 through 3 because Doc Shaner had to move across the country. And then Shaner would just take over. But since then, I was kind of disappointed because it was supposed to be, like I said, Reyes for the first arc, but I got to issue 3, which was supposed to be Reyes' last issue, and surprise, surprise, he's not even drawing it. It's some guy named Joe Bennett, who I don't even know. He draws like Reyes, so I see how they got him. It's just not quite as good as Reyes. So then I finally got to the Doc Shaner issue, and I was like, well, thank goodness, and I can't wait for next month, only to find out that in 2 months he's going to be gone, and that Bennett guy's going to come back. And then we're going to get Dale Eaglesham, who I like. He did Secret Six, and he's great. But I also was promised Doc Shaner. So, yeah. Anyway, this is just the neuroses of, like, trying to stay on top of your books. And then it's like, well, now I know all this information, and it's so frustrating. But it's like, what are you going to do with that anyway? I don't know. And it just got me sort of thinking about how sometimes we tell people you just got to roll with the punches when, your page count goes up or down for your book, or the prices get raised or lowered, or the creative teams change. And it's like, maybe we should care, but if we do, won't that drive us insane? I don't know. It's just kind of frustrating. And I think for a book like this, I do wonder whether or not all of these change-ups are going to sort of get people dropping it. Because from what I've heard through the grapevine, what is this series called? Like Dark Future or whatever? All these books where the artist gets billing first, they're not doing well apparently. So
interesting. But
beyond that, I mean, I really enjoyed number 4, obviously with Shaner. And we sort of have the fictional team kind of coalescing now, and of course we're going into space, and Mr. Terrific's ship is just one giant T-sphere, which Phantom Girl just keeps calling T-balls, which somehow that's amusing, I guess.
Hey, it's funny because didn't he originally call his little T-spheres T-balls, and then they were like, no, that sounds too childish, and then they changed it to T-spheres? I have a distinct memory of Mr. Terrific in the JSA run that Jeff Johns wrote, he called them T-balls, and I didn't think anything of it, but maybe I'm just remembering it wrong. Maybe I'm getting the Arrow TV show like wrapped into my head, because I think they make a joke about that in the show as well.
Oh, maybe. Okay. But yeah.
Before we move on,
yeah.
I have a grievance to pick with Nick.
Oh.
And I'm going to derail Mike's show, and he's going to yell at me later.
Oh, my.
But, okay, first of all, loved the show last week with the webcomics talk. So, Nick, you said, when asked about keeping up with webcomics, you said, I don't know who's just sitting at their computer reading comics. Tell us about how you read your digital comics until very recently, Nick. All your comicsology books. Explain to our listeners how you read those.
Oh, well, I mean, those are quote-unquote real comics and not web comics,
God.
so let's just start that flame war right off the bat. And secondly, curled up with my little computer. I guess necessity is the mother of invention, so I suppose that's why I have that tablet now.
So would you say that you are, in fact, a person who sits at their computer and reads comics?
Well, I was a very sad person who sat at my computer and read comics.
Okay. This has been Kate's call-out post. Now on with the show.
Okay. Anyone else who has grievances get in line, I suppose. But what about you, Mike?
For me, I read X-Men Gold number 30, and I heard so much muffled screaming on the internet about it. Like, no one blatantly spoiled it, but people were like, holy shit, this book, holy cow. And I was like, okay, so I stopped what I was doing in the middle of a D&D game to sit down and read this, because I'm that kind of jerk, I guess. And so this is Mark Guggenheim and David Marquez. This is the wedding issue between Peter and Kitty Pryde. So Colossus and Kitty Pryde were getting married. They've been building up to this for quite a while in the series. And boy, the end was something. I know a lot of people were talking about who's actually going to ruin this, what character is going to ruin this. I think on the show last week, I specifically called out what's going to happen that's going to make this go wrong. What actually happened in the issue was a genuine surprise, to the point where I had to get up and walk around to think about it, and in such a very good way. I wasn't mad about it. So many things happened. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I'm the happiest X-Men fanboy in the entire world right now. I don't know how Mark Guggenheim and Kelly Thompson and all the folks over at Marvel who are working on the X books, I don't know if they heard my mental calls and screams for something good to happen in this world, but it happened. So if they built up this X-Men Gold series for 30 issues, plus the Generation X, plus the Rogue and Gambit book, plus the Iceman book, plus all the other stuff that's been going on, just to get to this moment, I am so pleased, and I'm going to be... I don't know. I feel like I want to sit back and be like, I'm glad that I had faith in all of these X books, because it finally paid off. This is the first time in many, many years where investing in the X books as a hardcore reader has actually paid off. At least for me. I know a lot of people are very upset. I am not in that camp, and I just want to give the middle finger to everybody else who's like, oh, I can't believe that's exactly what happened. And then, it's so good. It's such a great thing. So I read
your
that.
General tone, I'm wondering if you were actually reading X-Men books.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. It's so unbelievable what happened that I'm gonna roll with it, and I'm very happy with how they're doing things.
Are you just super pleased because it's canceled? Is that part of it, or
That's not it at all. That's not it at all.
I heard it got canceled. Bleeding cool.
Listen, Nick.
Rich Johnson has the scoop, Mike.
Oh, it doesn't matter about what's canceled and what's still ongoing. It's the outcome of the issue that happened for the greater story universe that is what I'm pleased about. I know that they're ending all the gold, ending Gold and Blue, and they're doing all that stuff, but I'm really excited for what's actually happening canon-wise for the first time in a long time. I'm just it's very rare that I'm genuinely pleased. I keep saying genuine because
I know it's making me quite unsettled.
I'm really, really excited about the storyline that they decided to go with, and we'll see. The solicits for books just revealed this mystery book that is coming out in July, and I'm very excited to pick it up because I'm a sucker.
What is it?
If I tell you, it'll spoil the ending of X-Men 30. So I'll tell you during the break.
Oh,
I'll tell you during the break.
I thought you were just being, unfairly cryptic.
No. I'm trying not to spoil it for anybody because I really think people should go out there and read it. But I also want to talk quickly. I just read The Wildstorm number 12 and 13.
Yes.
Holy shit.
You're just one ahead of me then. Okay.
Warren Ellis just decided to kick things into 100th gear and really go crazy with this series. And so for 11 issues, it was kind of like, what's he building? What the fuck is this machine that I'm looking at? And in issue 12, things get revealed, and I just was like, I can't believe it.
Isn't 12 the one with the scene in the taxi cab at the end?
No, that was that was
11.
10. Or that was 11. Sorry, that was 11.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that scene is so cold. Holy shit.
Oh man. Everything about this book
Ice
has
cold.
gotten fantastic, and I'm totally digging it. This Warren Ellis and John Davis Hunt. If you haven't tried this book, I think you could go pick up the trades and catch up and start reading singles, and you will be blown away. There's so much machination going on in this book. I really appreciate it. I mean, Warren Ellis always does this. I always say this when I'm talking about his books. He loves building machines that get compounded as you build and build and build to a giant reveal. That's how he did it with Planetary. That's how he's doing it with Injection. That's how he's done it with a lot of his other books. I think Trees is another example, which, by the way, it's coming back, baby.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. And he's got another book coming out with Jason Howard, who worked on Trees with him. So
Cemetery Beach.
I'm super excited with all that's about Wildstorm. Things have gotten, there's finally making sense in a weird way, and it only took 12 issues. But like, you get into this book, you kind of have to trust these writers. I mean, Warren Ellis is a veteran in comic books, and so people that are on board with the book, like myself, know that he doesn't deliver quick and fast punches and deliveries. He's going to build something with small reveals along the way in order to make a bigger reveal that was like a, action in right hand, and he was playing you with his left. So I don't know what that phrase is, but you know what I mean about magicians. But so yeah, that's me. Let's move on. Let's talk about books that are coming out this upcoming week. Comic books are released on June 27th, 2018. Nick, what are you excited for this week?
I am really, really excited for Quantum and Woody number 7. This is written by Elliot Rahal and drawn by Francis Portela. For those of us who know Elliot Rahal, or for those of us who I suppose need to know about Elliot Rahal, he co-authored The Paybacks, one of Mike's favorite books, along with Donny Cates. Mm-hmm. But amongst Valiant readers, he's actually probably best known for writing two of the most emotional one-shots we've gotten. He wrote Bloodshot's Day Off, which is about, I think, the Vietnam Bloodshot and the World War II Bloodshot, sort of taking, obviously as it sounds like, taking a day off in D.C. and just sort of exploring the city and talking about what it means to be a soldier and sacrifice and things like that. And that nearly made me tear up. But then there was Divinity 3 Escape from Gulag 396, which is about Archer and Armstrong in the Divinity 3 alternate Russia universe, or I forget what name they captioned for that, but the two of them being in a gulag, Soviet prison of sorts. And that was, oh my God, that made me do a little bit more than tear up. That was like an amazing story about the relentlessness of the human spirit and the and whatnot, and those other things that I guess people with feelings talk about, I guess. They're like, this is where you're supposed to feel something, Nick. And I'm like, that's fine. That's very good. Beyond that, damn it all to hell if Quantum and Woody 6 didn't do the exact same thing to me. Also Elliot Rahal, his first issue on Quantum and Woody, and I thought I was safe because I'm like, he's going to make Quantum hate Woody, and Woody's going to hate Quantum, and it's going to be funny, and they're going to beat each other up. And then he's like, hey, what if I made this book real sad, okay? And I'm like, no, don't do it, Elliot. I've seen your work before. He's like, I'm going to turn this comedy into a tragedy, you bitch. And I was like, oh, no. And then he did. For those unaware, Livewire's decisions in Harbinger Wars 2 have left Quantum and Woody without powers. Because, if I understand it correctly, their molecules are unstable, and the bracelets keep their molecules stable if they're properly clanged together to extinguish whatever excess energy they have. And it's the bracelets being active that allows them to, like, I think technically funnel their energy into their powers. So when the bracelets don't work, Their atoms are just simply unstable and the energy can't be channeled. I know you were all looking for that highly technical explanation, but Nick,
Yes.
why won't their powers work? I know you were all wanting to know. Now you know. And so, of course, Quantum or Eric is like, we still need to help people. And Woody is like, have you seen the other 6 issues of this run so far? Not my thing. But Eric convinces him, and they try to help people in a burning building, and things get real sad. Things get real sad. Darkly funny, like morbidly funny, but super, super sad. And so the next issue, we're going to find out what happens when 2 brothers are not able to clang for 24 hours as they enter into a weird place called the Otherverse. It should be weird. Should be real weird. I don't know where this is going. Apparently it's a zone outside of the realms of life and death. So
oh boy,
this is exciting shit, man. And Francis Portela does the art. He did a splendid job. If anyone read Ivar Time Walker, did a great job on that. Then he went off and did a whole bunch of Faith, which I really don't read, but it's nice to see him back on a book that I do pay attention to. So dramatic superhero comic book shit going on over here. I'm so excited for 7. He better not make me cry again.
Kate, what about you? What are you excited for this week?
I'm excited for Modern Fantasy #1. I know nothing about this other than the preview pages. I saw this listed on my comic book shop's website of what's upcoming and like Googled it and pulled it up. It's being put out by Dark Horse, which I don't know why every publisher doesn't do this, but I love that Dark Horse puts up preview pages for all their books. And so it's by, I'm going to butcher this first name, Rafer Roberts. Okay. And then artist is Kristen Gudsnook, something like that. Have not read anything by either of them, but it's a new miniseries, which is also like, miniseries are like the easy way to step into something without too much commitment, right? So I'm like, I'm here for it. So this is what got me. I'm going to read it to you verbatim off of Dark Horse's website.
Go for it.
It's the most D&D thing I've ever heard. A young ranger woman who came to the city with dreams of adventure, her drug-dealing reptilian wizard roommate, and her boisterous dwarf maiden BFF embark on a modern-day quest to save the world while struggling to keep their crappy day jobs and pay off their student loans. It goes from there, but you can see why I'm picking it up.
Oh my god, I think I'm gonna pick this up. This sounds awesome.
Right?
Mike, can I read to you verbatim from the Nick White Valiant Encyclopedia briefly?
No,
okay?
Get out of here, Nick.
All right. Rafer Roberts, Archer and Armstrong A&A series is the worst Valiant series I've ever read.
Oh no!
Whoa.
End of story.
Uh-oh.
Whoa.
Well, that puts a damper on my excitement.
Hey, you know, this book looks awesome just from the previews alone, Kate. Don't let Nick's, like, terrible, pessimistic worldview ruin this for you. This looks awesome.
Okay. I don't agree with Nick at all times on comic books.
Not everybody is golden all the time, okay? So it's totally possible. Let me just say that.
I definitely don't always agree with Nick on comics. We have slightly different tastes.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't like something, it does make me suspect I might not like it either. So we'll see. So now I have tempered enthusiasm.
Okay.
Still picking it up.
Okay.
Not everybody is golden in different genres, so this, you know, who knows? Maybe this is more his thing anyway.
Could be. It looks great. I'm going to definitely try this because it looks fun.
Exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Well, for me this week, I'm super excited for Killer Be Killed number 20. This is Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. The reason why I'm excited for this issue is because it is the series finale, and I'm really baffled to see how they wrap this entire book up in one issue. If I'm not mistaken, this might be an oversized issue, but I'm like, on one hand, I'm sad to see the series go because I think it's great. Nick called this at like issue 4. This might be their best work yet. I totally agree after reading the whole series so far. But on the other hand, I am excited to see what happens next, like what Brubaker and Phillips are doing next, because they're in this, like, this is their first project in their 2 or 5 year do anything contract at Image, and we have yet to see something else come out of them. So whatever they've got coming next, I'm really excited for. I believe it's a standalone graphic novel that's coming out later this year. I don't remember what the name of it is, but
My Best Friends Are All Junkies, or All My Best Friends Are Junkies.
Yeah, and that looks
that.
like a super cool book. I'm buying that in hardcover because you can pre-order it, and it looks real pretty. Like, the pastel colors look fantastic. So I'm really excited to see this book wrap up in maybe get some answers about the crazy mystery behind this book. I'm slightly worried in a very small piece of my mind. I'm worried because I know that with a book like a supernatural book like this, the only other experience I can really think of with these two is Fatale, and I was kind of underwhelmed with the end of Fatale. I think the book on the whole is very good, and I recommend it to people all the time.
I think people found its ending lacking.
Yeah, and I was kind of in that same boat. I didn't think that it was the perfect ending. I'm not trying to say that I could have written a better ending because I think Brubaker and Phillips do a fantastic job, but again, it was a little underwhelming. I'm hoping that we're not going to get this. I have a very strong feeling we will not, but that's like the small little thing in the back of my mind that's kind of nagging me. But otherwise, this book has been fantastic for 19 issues. I would be very, very surprised if they somehow, quote unquote, screwed it up with issue 20. This is such a fantastic series. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. But that's me. I'm a Brubaker Phillips sucker, like a lot of other people out there. For our show this week, we are talking about our Goodreads Book of the Month, Nimona by Noelle Stevenson. But before we get into that, I want to bring up two quick things. One, we have a Q&A episode coming up on August 12th. So if you have any questions you want us to answer, anything at all, like I'm opening the floodgates for pretty much damn near anything, send it over to ircb@destroytheside.org or respond to us on Twitter or use the hashtag IRCBQA. One other thing I want to mention, the Goodreads Book of the Month voting for July is open and should still be open by the time this episode airs. So go vote on the manga nominations that we had for July. We're going to be talking about manga in the Goodreads group all throughout the month of July. So get ready for it. I'm super excited because The Frontrunner is one of my favorite manga right now. But we're not here to talk about any of that. We're actually going to talk about this book, Nimona, like I said. So Nick, Kate, full spoilers for this book. How did you guys feel? Just a warning, listener, full spoilers. How did you guys feel about this book? I've read it before, so I really want to hear your thoughts. Let's start with you, Kate, I guess.
I had also read it before. I love this book. I love Noelle Stevenson. I love Lumberjanes. I love her stuff on Tumblr. She's a delight. This book's a delight. I was very excited when it won so that I had an excuse to go back and reread it.
Nice. Cool. We're going to wrap this episode real quick up. Nick, how did you feel about this book? I feel like I don't think you had read this before, so maybe you've got a little bit different perspective.
Yeah, following hot on last week's episode, where I gave my very uneducated and brief experience with webtoons and webcomics, we just decided we'd carry over that same sort of lack of experience and knowledge in subject matter. And so this is my first time reading Nimona. Over the course of like 2 days. I mean, it's a fast read, but it's still like nearly a 300-page book, I think. So it still takes you a little bit of time. Unlike Kate, like I'm not real big on Noelle Stevenson. I tried Lumberjanes. I have the first trade sitting on my shelf. I've only made it halfway through, but that's as far as I got. I sort of knew what I was getting into in terms of the writing and in terms of the art. And I find this better than Lumberjanes, but it also can't escape the fact that it is the sole byproduct of her work. So, you can't get around that. I mean, I guess I should add this. I don't really think that this book is targeted at me, obviously. I don't think I'm the demographic here.
Sure.
I don't think that I'm the ideal demo that's going to make or break this book's profit margin. I guess that's probably the best way of putting it.
I mean, but if we're being honest, this book's already kind of had its heyday in terms of sales,
I mean,
and it's won its awards.
Don't get me wrong. Like, Nick White's, semi-lukewarm review is not going to tank this thing into the red, so to speak.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I still enjoyed it, and I still think that for the people in that demo, I think they're going to get a lot out of it. But and I do think it's a good book for introducing people to comics. I think it's easy to follow. I think it's very clear. It doesn't make weird page transitions. It doesn't make odd time hops or things like that without very clearly, identifying that to the reader. So as an introductory book into comics, especially as we've pointed out, I think, or at least we talked about before the show, for a book that was published largely by a prose publisher, I think that it's a very friendly and easy transition for readers to move into graphic novels or comic books. So
yeah. I totally agree with that. I mean, I never really got into Lumberjanes, but this book totally worked for me. I mean, it has a lot of the things that I think that teens would like, because I'm a teen expert, so I know that teens would be really into this.
Hello, fellow
landscape.
adults, yes.
Yeah, kind of thing. But I truly believe that. I think like if I handed this to someone between the ages of like 13 and 17, they would totally dig on this book a lot. Especially
if you dabbed a few times before passing it their way, getting a few dabs.
Yeah, as I showed up on my hoverboard, with my slit screen glasses, faux hawk ready, popped collar for. Wait, wrong generation. So but that being said, I really think that your point totally stands, Nick. That if you like, this is definitely for a different demographic. That doesn't mean that it's a bad book by any means. I think that it's a lot of fun. It's a good introduction book to get people into thinking, oh, look at this hardcover thing that someone gave me. It's published by not by a comics publisher, but by an actual prose company. Kind of it would allow like maybe somebody's parents to be like, oh, this is published by HarperCollins or whoever did it. Right. I'll let them read it.
And then it turns the sort of thing that ends up at a book fair, and I think that's a big determining factor in someone's success, is if you can get this sort of book into schools where comic books are still. I mean, we've made a lot of progress, but there's still a great ways to go. The fact that you can get this into like a school library or something like that, that's how you start them.
Yeah, and I think there are comics publishers that do that, and they're in that space. I think First Second is a great example of that. They're doing that, but we're getting kind of away from the actual subject matter here, which is, Nimona the book, kind of started as a webcomic. I actually had never read the webcomic beforehand. I only grabbed the book because I'd heard so much praise for it. Today, before the show, I actually sat down and read through some of the webcomic, and it's the same story, but you can see Noelle Stevenson's art has really evolved and gotten more refined, I guess more professional looking. And I don't want to say that the webcomic, it looks bad by any means, but you can tell that there's a lot more editing and heavy like work done to all of the pages to make them look cleaner and make them like more pronounced with color. And I will say the color work in this book is absolutely fantastic. But like the story in this book is really fun too, because it kind of takes that idea of the I say hip teen because I think the humor's there in terms of the like randomness and kind of really overly snarky tone of voice that a lot of the characters have, specifically the character Nimona, and like it totally works to think like this is exactly how a teenager who has these fantasies about like being the sidekick of a supervillain, this is how they would react from a meta perspective of like, of course the bad guy's going to fight the good guys and they're going to lose because we're just going to come back and do it again. And they hold on to that the same way that like a TV show like Venture Bros does, but in a much cleaner way. Venture Bros is very vulgar in a lot of sense, but they still have that same feeling of like, we understand what the actual meta narrative is here. There's a bad guy, there's a good guy, they're going to fight against each other. The bad guy's going to lose, but he's going to come back because the good guy's never going to kill him. It's that same problem we have with the Batman and the Joker. But
it reminded me a lot of in Austin Powers, where like Dr. Evil's about to kill Austin Powers or whatever, and they're like, aren't you gonna kill him or whatever? And he's like, no, like the laser will do the job, we're just gonna leave now or whatever. And then the assistant's like, wouldn't it be smart to just like stick around and prove it or whatever? And then
that's Seth Green, Dr. Evil's son. Come on,
I
Nick.
don't remember, man. Mini me like chocolate, Scotty don't.
Oh my Kate, please.
I can't believe you're here to be lukewarm on Nimona, but can freaking quote Austin Powers. I hate everything about you, Nick. Okay, so first of all, backtracking a little to go back on topic. With the webcomic, she started this when she was in art school, and so you can like it's normal to see in webcomics the progress that they make just doing a regular webcomic. They become much better artists, and you can see that with any webcomic as you follow that's been going for a long time.
Yeah,
she was in art school though, so it is like astronomical leaps and bounds. This was over a course of 2 years, and so when she started it, she was in art school, and then it ended when she finished art school, and so. Yeah, she grew enormously as an artist and storyteller in the progress of making Nimona. And And there was also all sorts of fun side stuff, like where people were really upset because it had a huge, huge fan following with people like commenting and doing fan art and all sorts of stuff. And so she had like a side thing when people got all distraught about them, about like the two main characters in an alternate universe are actually the gay dads of Nimona as a toddler that they've adopted. And,
oh my God, yes.
They had little sketches for that. And like, yeah, so you're right. She's come a really long way. And I like that they cleaned it into a very coherent book for art style wise when they put it all together to publish it. I think it flows really, really well because of that, because it's a consistent art style throughout.
Yeah.
Nimona reminded me a lot of Ripley. I think Kate mentioned that on the Goodreads forum too. Ripley from Lumberjanes, where she's just super boisterous and sassy and energetic and just like wanting to get into things. Mm-hmm. And I think when you're talking about like that teens would really like that, I think that's kind of gets to that where she's just a very fun and snarky character. And Noelle Stevenson really captures her dialogue really well, and all the other characters. I feel like if you read any lines in this book, you could tell the person you read them to, if they knew the story, could tell you who said them. They're like so well differentiated, and yet it doesn't feel forced at all, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think like if you compared a line from Nimona to a line from Blackheart, like it's night and day because of just like the tempo of how they say things and the word choices that they use. Like Blackheart sounds very regal, and he's a bad guy, so he's going to sound terrible and he's going to be grim. And you get the same way with what's his name, Golden Loin.
And yet Golden Loin is different than Blackheart too. Like they're very. Like you're saying, they're very like meta, aware of their roles, and like Mona's like, let's kill everything. It's like, no, we're villains, so we don't kill things. There's rules. Jesus, like, what are you, a monster?
I really like that. I thought that's so funny. That's what really hooked me on the whole story was this we're aware of our roles in this world, and it even becomes like a point of the story later. You know, I mean, near the end, Blackheart and Golden Loin are talking about, you knew that I was going to become the villain if this had happened to you. You know, where Golden Loin shot off Blackheart's arm. You know, like he's like, if this were to happen to you, you would be the villain and I would be the hero. It didn't matter. We just knew our roles, and I like that a lot. Like, I don't know, it totally worked in this story where we start really early with this idea of awareness of the meta storyline, and by the end, it actually plays out into the story. Like, it totally paid off for me.
I agree. I guess the book reminded me a lot of Bone by Jeff Smith, where it's really a very simple and kind of childish fantasy at first, but then it quickly becomes like more and more complex and gets darker tones.
Totally.
And it got so interesting. The whole points with Nimona's backstory, I think, are what really got me. So curious, and I definitely feel like I want more of it. I feel like I still don't really know who or what she is, and I want a sequel to this.
And I feel like that's kind of one of the points that frustrated me, because when you have a scenario like that, and I was getting towards the end of the book, and a lot of those questions were being raised for me, it was like, have I not been paying attention? Did I miss something? Because all of this seems really muddy, and I know Nimona's been saying this and that about her past, but apparently she's been lying, or hasn't she been lying, or was it kind of a half-truth? And I feel like some of those things didn't get resolved, and I know it's tricky, you know, authorial intent is a two-way street, but for me, I kind of left it going, like, did she not make things clear, or was this supposed to be this way, or did I not just pay attention? So that kind of frustrated me.
I think it was supposed to be that you're left with the mystery, like in the epilogue where Blackheart is talking about how he sees her in different people and animals and imagines that she's around and that kind of thing, and like he doesn't really know, and he never gets that full closure, and yet he's seeing her everywhere kind of thing. That's why I think a follow-up story, even if it was like, where did she go from there? Like, what is her next chapter in her life look like, I would love to see. But I do think it was very intentional. I don't think it's that you missed something. I really like the artwork too, and I know that's a fairly divisive point for some people. Like Chad said that he really liked the writing, but was not a fan of the art.
From the Goodreads group,
Danny on the Goodreads group, I said basically the opposite, that the art is like kind of cartoonish, but quote, that it perfectly serves the story, which I couldn't agree more. What did you guys think?
It's interesting to like think about the cartoony style of the book, except for like when like there were a handful of panels where there was like a very intricately drawn elephant, or the dragon scene when, you know, Nimona's hanging out on top of the bank. There's just a panel of the dragon, and it doesn't even feel like the style of the book. It feels like a very well drawn medieval style dragon. I really appreciated the attention to detail with that, but the cartoonish like nature of the book totally worked because things needed to be a bit more cartoonish to kind of add to this like semi-awareness of what was happening in the story by the characters. So like, you know, and it allowed you to do things like goofy spots where Nimona would just be like hanging off of Blackheart's shoulder. That doesn't really work that well with realistic art, but it totally works in this cartoonish style. Or like at one point Nimona's like, her head is just barely peeking over a desk, and like you can do that with realistic art, but it never feels as great compared to like a cartoonish style like this. Like a SpongeBob SquarePants totally works for doing that. Maybe not so much like, I can't think of a realistic art like style, but like I don't know, I feel like it totally works for the whole
Alex
feel
Ross.
of it. Like Alex Ross isn't going to have characters peeking their head over a table to try to look goofy and to be quirky, just because it's never going to happen. That's about it.
Yeah, I think you could also call it like, compare it to who draws Jenkins, Tyler Jenkins, like that kind of, it's more like stylized than cartoony almost. Tyler Jenkins isn't in Grass Kings. We're never going to see someone just peeking their head cutely over a, you know, right, but I just mean like stylized in that it's a very unique style to the point where if you see something drawn that way, you're like, oh, Noelle Stevenson did that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hate to say it because people hate having their art compared to this, but for me it is somewhat in that Adventure Time camp.
Don't you dare.
Yeah, but I also was going to compare it to like anime, because I think like anime has a lot of these fun little goofy tropes in them as well.
Well, it's very simple characters, like just profile wise, but there's a lot of room left for character facial expressions, and yeah, I would agree with you in that sense.
Yeah.
The models themselves are not that intricate, but the faces are still allowed quite a bit of leeway to do all sorts of different expressions.
Yeah.
I do think that the style allows her to be really incredible at showing movement. Like, the characters never feel stiff or static on the page the way that they can in some comic books. And especially Nimona is just always moving. And even just little things, like showing her, like, wiggling in patience when she's bored. Mm-hmm. And, like you're saying, like, peeking and just always in motion. I think I thought any of the
transformative effects I thought were really, really good with all of that weird wispiness and everything. And I thought that was really good. I thought the huge knockdown, drag out fight with all of the massive amounts of transformations, I thought that was really impressive. I think she's actually better at drawing animals than she is at drawing people. Not that that's a bad thing. That's just where I think her talent lies. So if you're looking for some professional criticism, I guess there you go. No.
Speaking of transitioning and fights and stuff like that, I thought the use of the color palette to like be able to ID Nimona in all her different shapes was really smart and really well executed.
Yeah, when she turns into Blackheart and her hair is just like slightly red. Mm-hmm. That was too cute.
Like, how, because otherwise, gosh, you think about it, like, you have a whole comic about a character that's all different things all the time. How would you depict that and not make people endlessly confused? And just doing it with that touch of color, and then showing her kind of changing and how she's experiencing changing by changing her hair color, I thought was really interesting. And then she does the very traditional comic book thing where she uses color to show, like, different time periods when there's flashbacks and different locations. Like, the color palette is very different in the, what are they called? The company.
They're just called
the Institute. Yeah, the color palette is very different in the Institute kind of thing. And
yeah, it's greens versus reds, yeah.
Right.
Can we talk about something at the beginning of the book briefly? If I'm remembering this wrong, when she shows up, she says the Institute sent her, right? Or something along these lines?
Right.
Do we ever get any elaboration on that? Because obviously we would have to believe that that's not true at all, but how does she find him, or what is her interest in him?
So he's famous in this world, right? He's the famous villain, and so
I guess
he, it's quickly admitted that she wasn't really sent by them, but she's just a big fan and was trying to get in with him, kind of thing, because like he's the big bad guy and she wants to be a villain too.
Okay. I guess I thought there was more there or something that wasn't really touched on, but I guess it...
If you look at it from, like, the full story perspective, right, the Institute was aware of Blackheart. They were aware of where he was. They were aware of him being the villain. It would make sense that maybe they think, oh, you need a sidekick, so they would send him along. And then when Nimona actually shows up and starts causing more chaos, they're like, whoa, Blackheart has gotten way out of line. We need to stop him. They could have done that from the get-go, but they didn't, because for some reason this world wanted that sort of fight. That's kind of how I read it. I mean, obviously he calls her bluff, and it turns out it wasn't true, and yada yada yada. But still, like that kind of again, big awareness of the overall like archetypes of villain versus hero totally exist, and they acknowledge it, and that's just a further acknowledgement of where that Blackheart would half believe that to begin with. To say, oh well, that makes sense, but wait a second, they wouldn't do that. Like he totally believed it and then realized it was a farce. Like, I just think that was just leaning further into that whole recognition of story.
Well, you end up with like traps within traps within traps within traps, so yes.
Yeah.
This gets meta to a point that you either find it painful or funny, or painful and then funny, or funny and then painful.
Sure.
So Francis pointed out, he said on the Goodreads group, I've been more aware of the parallels to Orwell's 1984 and how that the party uses propaganda to create an enemy in endless war so as to spread fear and use that fear as a means of control. And he's comparing that to the Institute, and I thought that was a really cool point about basically how the rules of like, well, we always fight and you always plot to do stuff and I always stop you, and you never really do much harm, but I also never stop you. That kind of manufactured conflict, that has no resolution but just incentivizes the populace or keeps them entranced or whatever, I thought was really a clever point, and an interesting one. And they use that to justify all their experimenting with Jade Root and all that other stuff.
Yeah. I mean the ploy that the Institute had of the ploy that Blackheart had to say, oh, well, let's poison the people, and they're not going to die, they're just going to get sick.
Right.
Like in order to frame the Institute, like obviously Blackheart has a big chip on his shoulder against them, given everything that happened, but like he's never super nefarious about it. He's just kind of seeking some slight revenge. To what end, we never find out, which I thought was like the biggest plot hole in this book. Was Blackheart was constantly trying to fight against the Institute, but to what end? And even Nimona kept asking him, what is your actual end goal? And he's like, I don't know, I'm not going to lead, I'm not going to take over the Institute, I just want to do this, which is kind of weird, but I guess maybe Kate, you've read this and you have a different insight into it.
Yeah, I think both Goldenloin and Blackheart feel really stuck in their roles. Like, they know their roles, but they also don't seem to be able to break out of them. There's that whole relationship between them that you can read a lot into, and they're childhood friends, and they may or may not be romantic with each other or want to be.
Yeah, they definitely were, though. For sure. But I think that, at least to me, it seemed very much like they didn't like their roles, but also didn't seem to be able to break out of them. So She keeps pushing him, like, why are you still in this cycle? Why can't you do more? Why can't you change things? And he's just like, well, because I can't. And the same with Goldenloin, where it's like, well, why are you, Blackheart keeps pushing him, and he's like, why are you still fighting for them? Why are you doing this? Why are you, being like this? And he's like, well, I just have to. So they're like aware of it, but can't step out, which, #relatable. Sure.
And so I think that to me made sense. And then the ultimate resolution is Nimona does break the cycle by blowing the shit up.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
Because
okay.
like all those people are dead. And she literally burned it to the ground. So go Nimona.
At what point are we going to talk about the violence in this book?
Oh, yeah.
Because that was something that, Nick, I know you had pointed out to me at one point when we were talking about this in preparation for the show. Just like there's a lot of violence in this book, and it's kind of talked about, but it's not really, like, there's no resolution from it. It seems to be just kind of hand-waved over. And I mean, like, we get that in every comic book ever that's going to have any action. It's going to have anything. There's going to be violence. There's going to be death. It's what happens in action stories like this. But again, going back to the thing, I'm pulling from Nick's points that he had said to me. It's like, is this, like, was Nimona supposed to be seen as like a good guy, a bad guy, a kind of like a neutral character, or was she really just supposed to be like a force of change? Like, maybe she was the person that introduced change in order to break some broken cycle. I mean, maybe I just answered my question.
I do think that's it. I think she comes in and everyone that in this world is kind of stuck in this pattern, and she shakes up the status quo and burns it to the ground, and then she leaves. And that's kind of, she comes in as this kind of force of nature to be reckoned with.
It reminded me of Mad Max, the new movie, where he just shows up and does his job and then just walks off.
Yep.
Oh, I didn't consider that. That's actually, I like that.
Maybe Mike,
I missed the scene where
if you get an English degree and you pay them the obscene money that you pay them, you'll be able to come up with these sorts of pithy pieces of shit.
Gotcha. I mean, I did miss the scene in Mad Max where he turned into a dragon. Maybe I need to watch that again.
Look,
it would have been.
I know they're working
better
on making this into a movie, so let's just cast Tom Hardy, and he can just mumble his way through the role.
Right. I mean, Francis also pointed out, like, this is something I want to talk about because it was, like, on my second read, it was way more apparent than the first read. Francis said, the characters of Lord Ballister and Sir Goldenloin were cool. The way their love for one another was undermined by a manufactured rivalry gave them strong motivations. And that kind of talks to Kate's point about them seeing, like, I don't know what to do, but it gives me, to me, I read it as, I don't know what to do, but it gives me a reason to interact with this person. And neither of them wanted to stop that because I think they both wanted to come together, because I totally read this underlying love story between the two of them, or they at one point were together and now they no longer could be because they were such staunch rivals because of this perceived betrayal from Sir Goldenloin onto Ballister. I'm getting this backwards. No, I got it right. Between, Goldenloin, where he shot Blackheart, I'm calling them by last names because that's easier in my head. And, at one point when they go meet in the tavern and Goldenloin puts his hand on Blackheart's hand, I saw it this time and I went, oh, that's what's going on, because he wanted things to go back to the way that they were, even though it was impossible. And that, like, I didn't even read into that at all. Even in the flashback to them as younger kids in the epilogue, like the special Christmas story about about Blackheart giving Goldenloin his, like, little toy. And he's like, oh, I've got one just like yours. You should bring yours out. Which I thought was really cute. And, like, so I read way more into this book. I liked that a lot. Like, I didn't even pick it up the first time, and it's like a nice way to kind of say, this is a relationship between two people, and unless you're looking for it, you're not going to see it. But I think a lot of people who are probably studying this book or reading this book like as like an introduction to comic books may see it like that because they're absorbing it all for the first time and probably taking it in with a much bigger, like, I guess they're probably using a magnifying glass to read the book because they're like having such a like big experience with this new thing. I feel like I'm not describing what I'm trying to say.
Mike's
here
just
very
gonna
well,
go home after this and watch The Sixth Sense and be like, "Oh shit, this too."
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It wasn't obvious to me the first time I read it. That's all.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think you come to books with very different ways of seeing and interpreting them depending on your past experiences. Like, I think as longtime comic book readers, we all know the trope of, like, the Dark Phoenix, right? Like, that really recycled cliche of the woman with terrible power that, we have to conquer to save the world because she's going to destroy everything because women are scary. And instead, in Nimona, they try and control her and they're scary and all that stuff, but she breaks free and, like, she has the best possible ending, right? She gets to go off and choose her own fate and is not terrible. She's in control.
Yeah, it was an interesting ending in that regard because I really wasn't sure. Like, I remember thinking this the first time I read it. I was like, how is this book going to wrap up? Like, how are they really going to settle this and make sure that we get a slight happy ending? Because not to say that I expected a happy ending, but like, you can't really put out a book like this and get without some sort of happy ending for someone. And in the end, it fixed things for Blackheart, and he went from this very bitter, like secluded person to going back to doing the thing that he loved, which was science, that blanket statement of science. And I liked that, and I liked that, to your point, Kate, pointing out that Nimona also was free. She was no longer, it seemed like she was going to be in shackles and she was going to be defeated for the benefit of, another character. But in the end, she was able to escape. I think that's a happier ending than probably most people would expect coming out of this.
Right, and the whole story is told from Blackheart's perspective, and so from his perspective, like, she kind of comes in to his kind of very stale, cyclical world and shakes things up and then leaves, and I think that's a really interesting way to tell a story kind of thing, where for him, it's kind of like just the chapter, but it breaks him out of all that. And now, in my heart, I believe that he and Goldenloin are living happily ever after together.
Sure. Yeah. We didn't see his morning routine afterwards, but, we'll see maybe in the sequel. I don't think there's going to be a sequel, but,
I don't think so either.
In my fan fiction sequel, you're going to see the morning routine. So I guess, what are your guys' final thoughts on this book? Like, I know we've talked about it for quite a bit. But if you had to like sum up your thoughts about this book, what would they be?
I would say that this is a beautifully illustrated graphic novel that I would absolutely recommend to comic fans and non-comic fans alike. It's a very easy, like we talked about, entry point, easy to read comic that I think, like you said, Mike, would be really appropriate for teenagers. I would even say middle schoolers.
Yeah.
I would absolutely give this like as a gift to friends' daughters in a heartbeat. I think it's fantastic. It has a wonderful message, and it's a lot of fun.
What about you, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I think that the approachability here is probably one of this book's greatest talents. It's self-contained. Aesthetically, it's got a pretty good art style. There aren't any volumes that follow it. There isn't some weird, set of books that you've got to pick up or order or buy following it. So it's all right there. And yeah, as Kate said, the message is good. I would say, obviously, that the book is, I feel, more meant for or targeting younger readers, but as we said, I think there's value for those looking to get into comics in this book as well. So
yeah, I think it's legitimately all ages. We've talked about that on the show before, where some things say all ages but mean children, and I think this is one that can really be enjoyed by a 10-year-old and a 30-year-old.
Totally. I think in my never-ending ploy to get everyone to play D&D, this would be a book that I would give to somebody and say, like, hey, look, here's the fantasy genre to a certain extent, because there's a lot of like technology in it used as like some plot points, which it's a whole other discussion.
Oh, don't start me on that.
I know I didn't want to set Nick off, but I mean, on the whole,
some weird world building choices here. Let me tell you,
I think they're so much fun though.
Hey,
hey, we have archers, but we don't have guns.
Yeah, because she mixes medieval fantasy and sci-fi, and it's delightful.
Well, nonetheless, I would still give this to someone to say, hey, here's a cool fantasy book that's got a lot of modern feel to it. It's not going to overwhelm you like a Game of Thrones. It's not going to get super into the magic of the realm like maybe Lord of the Rings or something like that. But it's very approachable. It's really easy to read. You're going to have a lot of laughs. You're going to have a lot of like big moments in the book, and it ultimately climaxes in such a way that you feel good at the end. You feel satisfied with the narrative. And then after that, we can roll up characters, and you can pick if you want to be a Goldenloin, you can. If you want to be a Blackheart, you totally can. If you want to be a Nimona, we can work on it. It's complicated, but like it's totally possible by 20th level that you could definitely be a druid that wild shapes, 5 to 20 times a day if you want. We'll figure it all out. That's how I would get someone into this book. Thanks for letting me be a total nerd on this show. So yeah, I mean, but you know, I think this is a great pick. I'm really excited that we were able to pick this for the Goodreads group. The theme of the month was, you know, creators who are, you know, LGBT plus, and I think like this definitely is like a great book in general, and it just happens, you know, to be written by Noelle Stevenson, who is fantastic as well. Yeah, so I guess that's pretty much it. Any other final words about this? And I don't want to go into this whole world building thing with Nick, but I feel like I've just been rambling.
It's beautiful. I want to play this D&D campaign with you. Let's make it happen.
We're gonna finally get Nick to play Dungeons and Dragons with us. That's what's gonna happen. And seeing that Nick is not arguing that point, I'm gonna assume that's a yes.
It's definitely happening.
So I guess let's wrap up here. You can follow everyone on the show on Twitter. You can follow Nick at Death Star Plans. You can follow Kate at Kate Scotchless. You can follow me at Mike Rappin, and you can follow the show at IRCB Podcast, where I'm posting things all hours of the day and night. And every week we post a poll. This week's poll is, what is the best season for comics? Because I was really out of ideas today.
Beyond that, we would recommend that you go ahead and check out our Goodreads group. We have weekly threads. This week's thread was Your Biggest Letdown Comic. As most of you will expect, I'll definitely have 2 cents to add in on that one.
Yeah.
Other than that, check out our website, ircbpodcast.com. We have a pronunciation guide for names, none of which I think I butchered this week. There will be time for next time. And we also have merch.
So Mike has worked hard to figure out the equation to success, and it is rate plus subscribe equals more listeners. So please rate us and subscribe to the show. That helps us a lot. You can also email Mike at ircb@destroythecybe.org. He's lonely and loves hearing from you.
It's so true. It's so true. Infinity Shred is the best band in the universe. They do all the music for the show. We can't thank them enough for letting us use their music. Xander is a wizard. He's also like that cool guy that's walking down the street and you like glance at him and he gives you like pointy fingers and then he puts his sunglasses on and skateboards away. He edits the show as well. I want to say thank you to Kate and Nick for being on the show. I want to say thank you to you, the listener, for being fantastic and checking out this show and listening to it and telling all your friends about it. Before we go, I want to remind everyone that we will be off for a month. I haven't been telling anyone, but we're doing this thing that we do every summer where we take the month of July off. So we'll be back at the end of July. I believe it's like the last Wednesday of July we'll be back. So until next time, be the change in the world you want to see with patience and kindness. Thanks for listening.